In this video, we're going to talk about if the Sony NEX cameras are still worth picking up, or if you should just shoot straight for the a6000 series or even the a7 series. Let's get right into the video. So the first Sony NEX mirrorless camera was released in 2010, and they were made all the way up until about 2012, I believe, and it ended off with the NEX 6. And so there's a total of 10 NEX mirrorless bodies, and that's not including like the NEX VG series or the FS series, which is technically NEX series. I'm just talking about the mirrorless cameras, the DSLR style of cameras, not the video-centric cameras. So all in all, when it comes to the NEX mirrorless bodies, there's a total of 10 of them, which includes the NEX 3, C3, F3, 3N, 5, 5N, 5R, 5T, 6, and 7. So there's a whole bunch of different options, and they range anywhere from about $60 all the way up to about $300. The question of the day is, are any of these even worth buying now since they're so old at this point? Some of them being up to 10 years old. So that question has a couple different answers, and it depends on your budget. I promise I'm gonna give you a solid, definitive answer, so stay tuned to watch this whole video. But it really does depend on who you are and what type of camera you're looking for. So I'm gonna go over all these different models and kind of talk about what they're used for and what type of person would use each of these camera models and which one is the best value for each different type of person. And now I've made videos about most of these cameras, so I'm gonna link all of them down in the description if you wanna check out my reviews of each one of these cameras. There's still a couple I haven't got to yet, which I hopefully will soon, so definitely stay tuned and subscribe. But I have had quite a bit of experience using the NEX cameras, and I've owned almost the entire series, so pretty much everything I talk about will be coming from experience and with just past knowledge about these cameras. So like I said, they range anywhere from around $60 for the NEX 3, which is the first ever NEX camera, all the way to about $300 for the NEX 7. So there's a pretty big variation in price between all 10 of these different models, and it makes sense. Most of it's down to just the age of the models. It's, for the most part, the oldest are the cheapest, the newest are the most expensive, which makes sense. I mean, the newer ones are going to have better technology, better autofocus, better sensors, versus the ones that are 10 years old. However, there is still a couple models that really stick out versus the rest of them and offer the best value for the money. And those are the ones we're really going to talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and answer the question of the day right now. Are the NEX cameras still worth picking up? And I say 100% yes. As long as you stick to the ones that I'm going to talk about, you'll get the best value out of these cameras. And if you're a beginner, if you're just getting into photography or just getting into video and you don't have a big budget, these are really the best cameras to get into for that budget price point. So I'm going to bring up those couple models that I really think give the best value, and then I'm going to talk about why NEX cameras are still so recommended and why I really think you should pick one up if you're a beginner getting into video or photos. Alright, so I'm going to talk about 4 different cameras as the best models for the value for different scenarios. So the first things first, if you want to get into recording videos, you want to get into filmmaking, or even starting a YouTube channel, or anything else, family videos, any other reason you need video for, I would recommend the NEX 7. Now this isn't the newest NEX camera, but it is going to be the most expensive out of these. And if that is too pricey for you, I will bring up a second contender for best video. But the reason why I chose the NEX 7 for the go-to if you want to record videos is because it has a microphone input, which you're 100% going to need if you want to record any sort of video that you need sound for. So if you didn't know, the NEX 7 is the only NEX camera that has a microphone input jack. And so that means you can plug in a microphone like the one I'm using right now. I have it plugged into my camera, or like a shotgun microphone that you can attach to the hot shoe of your camera and get really good audio with. When you record a video, you want to have good audio 100% of the time. Now the NEX 7 also does have 2 different dials on the top of the camera for controlling exposure. And when you're recording video, you want to have really easy access to your ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And the NEX 7 gives really good access to that with those 2 dials up front that you can change to any of those. So really the main reasons why I'd recommend picking up the NEX 7 for videos are because of those 2 reasons. It doesn't have 4K video, it doesn't have a crazy better video than the rest of the NEX cameras, but it has a microphone input jack and it has really convenient dials for dialing in your exposure. And so because of those reasons, I'd 100% recommend the NEX 7 if you want to record videos. Alright, next up, if you're looking to get a new camera for photography, I have 2 cameras to recommend, one on a low budget and one on the high budget. So the low budget camera for photography that I'd 100% recommend out of the NEX line is the NEX C3. So this is going to be one of the lowest priced NEX cameras, right above the NEX 3. But the reason I'd recommend this over just the regular NEX 3 is because it's 16 megapixels versus 14 megapixels. So it has an upgraded 16 megapixel sensor, which will create higher resolution, higher quality images versus the regular NEX 3. And it's also a little bit newer. I think it's a year newer than the regular NEX 3. That doesn't matter as much for photos, but really I'd recommend it because of the higher resolution sensor. It's just going to provide better photos overall than the NEX 3 at just a little bit higher of a price point. I think it's about $20 more than the regular NEX 3, so I definitely recommend it because of that reason. So if you're on a really tight budget and you want to get a camera to start into photography, I'd recommend the NEX C3 and then invest all the rest of the money into lenses 100% of the time. Now, if you have a higher budget, like something around $200, the NEX 6 is 100% the way to go. This camera is literally like a baby A6000 at like half the price. So the NEX 6 has a 16 megapixel sensor, which is less megapixels than the NEX 7's 24 megapixels. However, the NEX 6 is the newest NEX camera. It has the highest performance, the highest build quality, and overall, if you round off everything about it, I think it's the best NEX camera you can get. This camera is essentially almost identical to the Sony A6000, which is one of the highest selling beginner cameras of all time. It might actually be the highest selling digital camera of all time. The A6000 is essentially the perfect beginner camera, and the NEX 6 is just behind it. And honestly, I think the NEX 6 is just the way to go for photos. So those are the three cameras for each of those price points and uses. Now, I didn't talk about a low budget for video because there's one camera I think is really the one to do everything at the best price point, the best value NEX camera I'd say overall in general, and that's the Sony NEX 5N. So this camera's right in between the higher up ones and the lower level ones. It's right in the middle of the budget at like $100 to like $150, somewhere around there. This camera has a 16 megapixel sensor, so it's also right in the middle ground. It's more than 14 like the low end ones. It's a little bit less than 24 like on the NEX 7. It's a really small body. It's a smaller body than the NEX 6 and 7, but not quite as small as like the NEX 3. I mean, really everything about it is right in the middle price point, the middle performance, but it still records 1080p video at up to 60 frames a second, as well as 24 frames a second, which are the two you're gonna want for recording videos. As a 16 megapixel sensor, it's not the oldest out of the bunch. I think it was made in 2011 or 12. So it's kind of right in the middle ground of sensor technology. So it has a great sensor for great photos. It doesn't have a microphone input jack. However, it does have the accessory port on the top where you can put a flash for photography, or Sony makes a microphone as well. It's not the best, but it definitely will do if you're getting into like vlogging or something like that. And overall, I think the NEX 5N is really the best budget oriented, but still highest performing for the price NEX camera out of the bunch. I think if you just want to get into NEX cameras, you really don't know what you want yet, the NEX 5N is perfect because it's still that really budget price point where you can invest more in lenses, but it also records pretty good video, really good photos. Overall, I think the NEX cameras are still definitely worth picking up if you're just getting into photography or video work and you don't have a super high budget, or you're looking for even like a secondary camera body, really anything that you're not going to be shooting professional work. These cameras are really fantastic. They're going to be much better than your phone camera, but still with a really small camera body and a budget price point. I think NEX cameras are just honestly perfect for any sort of beginner or budget work. Now, of course, if you want to do professional video, professional photos, I wouldn't recommend them. I would honestly recommend switching up to like the A6400 or A7 III or something like that, which are obviously going to be much higher price point, but you really can't expect to get a professional level video or photo camera for under $300, for, you know, between $60 and $300. It's just not feasible. It's never going to happen. But anything else, the NEX cameras are seriously perfect. They're just awesome. They provide such good value. So many people don't even know about them and just forgot about them. And honestly, I'm just going to always keep recommending them until there's something better for cheaper price points, which who knows if that'll ever happen. So all in all, NEX cameras 100% still worth picking up. Definitely go check out my reviews of all the different NEX cameras on my channel, and really I talk about all sorts of budget cameras on my channel, so stay tuned for that and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.